There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're really glad to have you here tonight. I'm Darla Clayton. I work for the Alliance to Cure Cavernous Malformations as the Community Relations Specialist. And I'm really excited to introduce Jennifer Franchak, who is a certified functional nutrition counselor and a cavernous malformation patient. She's going to be talking to us tonight about gut health. I'm going to ask that you use the Q&A for questions, although at this point the chat is not working anyway, but hopefully I'll fix that. But regardless, if you could use the Q&A for questions, we should have time for questions at the end. And I also just wanted to put a plug in at the moment that we do have support group right after this meeting tonight. So I'll drop the link in at some point, and hopefully you guys will be able to join us for a support group after the meeting if you would like to. And without further ado, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you guys all about leaky gut and to just take this time to address everybody about this. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Is that okay? Okay. All right. I'm going to just take a second here and get started. So like Darla said, my name is Jennifer Franchak. I'm a certified functional nutrition counselor, and I had a cavernous malformation that bled back in 2019. And it was one of the scariest things that I've ever been through in my life, which I'm sure that many of you can relate to. I don't know exactly when it bled, but I started experiencing numbness and tingling down the left side of my body. And sometimes I would have nausea and dizziness that would go along with that. And that led me to see my doctor, which I admit it took me a while to go see my doctor because even though I knew that there was something wrong, I was scared to find out what was wrong. So I kind of drug my feet a little on that. But once I did see my doctor, he sent me to get an MRI, and that led to the discovery of the cavernous malformation. In real life, it kind of took a lot longer, the process, but and later I found out that the numbness and tingling that I was experiencing were partial focal seizures due to the bleed, which I think many of you have maybe experienced as well. Now, what I do for a living is I teach men and women how to change their lifestyle and their nutrition so that they can heal their gut health and improve brain function and improve chronic and autoimmune conditions and just stay healthy so that they can enjoy their lives instead of struggling with debilitating symptoms. And I believe that even though there are so many factors that are outside of our control when we receive a diagnosis or maybe when we're going through a major illness, a lot of times it feels like it's all spinning out of control. It's overwhelming. There are also so many factors that we can control, and these can lead to a better outcome. So once I had a diagnosis for myself as a functional nutrition counselor and someone who loves to learn, I really wanted to see if and how food and lifestyle could help me, particularly with the seizures. So I read many, many studies. It kind of became like a second or third job for me. I was just always reading some kind of study about the type of cavernous malformation that I had, and particularly outcomes in people that had seizures with cavernous malformations. And eventually I decided to try a classical ketogenic diet. And for me, that actually, after about 2 weeks, my seizures completely stopped. Now, I know that this does not work for everybody, but for me, it actually did. And I was so excited. This was before I met with my epileptologist. And so I went to see my epileptologist and was excited to tell him that I didn't need to go on any medications, but he was kind of surprised. He had never had a patient who had done this before, but he wanted me to take Keppra just as a safety net to make sure I didn't have any breakthrough seizures. And for those of you who take Keppra, you may understand why I didn't want to be on it forever if I could avoid it. So while I was researching everything and going through this whole process, I found the Alliance to Cure Cavernous Malformations. And it has been such a blessing for me to be able to be part of this group and to interact with other people who are going through the same or similar situations. In July of 2020, I had surgery to remove my cavernous malformation, which It went well, thank God. I was able to use my knowledge of nutrition to help me to get specific nutrients into my diet to help the healing process, both before and after surgery. And thankfully, for the most part, the healing went pretty smoothly. But again, I was so thankful for this group because inevitably there are some bumps in the road after a major surgery. And I had some questions like, how do you wash your hair when you have staples in your scalp, right? It's a little scary. And what is this random pain that I'm getting? Is this normal? And it was just so nice to have people that understood and kind of got it to provide emotional support and just answer some questions. So about 9 months after surgery, by the way, I was able to get off of Keppra, which I was really happy about because it just did not really work for me very well. But this whole process has been such a journey and it continues to be a journey. I think anytime we have a major diagnosis or an illness, it really affects us for the rest of our lives in positive and negative ways. But I just wanted to mention that I do have a much more detailed version of my story available on YouTube. If it's something that you think might be helpful for you, I can give you that information at the end of the presentation.
Hey, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're seeing your speaker notes.
Oh, you are? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
don't know
I
how to remedy that. Any ideas? Should I start
um
sharing again?
that's a good question. Do you want to maybe let's try stopping the share and see if you can we'll see if we can figure it out.
Okay, no problem. All right, let's see.
Just give us 1 second.
Sure.
Thank you guys for letting us know because I was like thinking I thought I maybe had a special view, but no, I didn't.
Sorry, didn't give
No,
you a
it's
special
okay.
view. Do you want me to
Um,
try and
do
share?
you still see them on your side? I guess you're supposed to see them. Go ahead and try again, and I'll let you know if I see them.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here.
I know because I wasn't seeing them when we were running through practice. So
Yeah, that's odd. Okay, so I'm just going to go to slideshow and presenter view. And are you seeing?
yeah, we're seeing them. Try to
Oh,
do so. If you go out and do because the presenter view is maybe what's the problem?
hmm.
Is there another option that's not presenter view?
I mean, if worst comes to worst, I can just continue, but I don't want to block the slide for you guys. Let me stop sharing. It's always a technical difficulty, huh? All
All
right.
right, I'm seeing if someone's.
Maybe there's somebody technically savvy in the
Someone is
audience.
saying don't do presenter view.
Oh, okay. Well, how do I see my notes?
I don't know. Yes, someone is asking if it will be uploaded. It'll be on YouTube in a little bit. It-
Let's see here. Yeah, because you're not supposed to be able to see them, I don't think.
yeah, so
Huh. I'm stumped. I'm sorry.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, maybe just go ahead and if you can just pull them over to the side as much as
Yeah.
possible.
I'm sorry, everybody, about that. That's very
I'm
odd.
getting messages that other folks use two screens.
Really. They use
So
two
that's
screens.
fancy. I don't have two
I,
screens.
yeah, and I'm not the most technically savvy, so I apologize. Let's see here. Uh, this could be
Um,
interesting, guys. I will try though.
just instead of um, I'm looking. Are you seeing these comments? People are giving us suggestions. Thank you guys
Yeah, I don't see
in
anything
the
because I have
chat. So maybe try sharing just the power. Oh, I think it's not a PowerPoint though. It's a Google slide.
Yeah, it's a Google slide. I'm sorry.
Um,
I'm sorry.
I wonder if you go ahead and share it again.
Okay.
And
I mean, I am. So should I unshare it and then share it again?
oh,
Um,
share your screen because I don't see your screen right now.
okay. I mean, it is, let's see. All right, let's see. Oh, okay. I wasn't. See, I'm not technologically savvy. Can you see it now?
Hang on. Yes, we see it now. Um, you know what else we could do, Jennifer? If you want, I can pull up the presentation on my end and I can share it, and you can then just tell me when you want me to split the screen.
Okay. Would that be when
Because
you want me to go to
then you'll have access to your notes, and I won't, and
okay.
I can not potentially.
Okay. Whatever works. I mean, so you want me to tell you when to go to the next slide?
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay. All
Thank you
right.
guys for being patient.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about this.
I just need to find the presentation. Do you want to just shoot it to me real quick, or do I have the most recent version?
No.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I added some pictures and
Okay.
things. If I just give you the link, will you,
Yeah,
um, okay, sorry. I feel like, um,
it is fine.
right. Sorry, I'm trying to access Messenger here, but it's my computer's not. You know what? Instead of wasting time, I'm happy to just go through it. And
Okay.
you guys don't mind seeing my notes. I apologize, it's not ideal, but I don't want to waste everybody's time. So if
If
you're
you,
okay with that, I'm
yeah, that's fine. And can you see your notes well enough in this view? Because they are less obtrusive in that when it's not in presenter view.
um oh, I see what you're saying.
Because right now
I
they
mean,
cover the whole slide.
they cover the whole slide. Well, yeah, I can't really see them very well. I will just do my best to move it around.
Okay.
If that works for you, just so I can see. So we'll just continue. And you guys probably, if that's okay, Darla,
It
I'll just
is
keep going.
fine.
All right. We'll roll with the punches, right? Um, so you guys probably have seen, since you've had all this time to look, I did put together a free resource for you, which will be available to you after the presentation. I'll give you a link so that you can download it. But it's a companion guide to this talk, and it has some recipes and templates and just different resources to help you support your gut health. But tonight, we'll finally get to this, right? Tonight, I want to teach you all about leaky gut and what it is, why it happens, how it happens, and what we can do about it. So I just want to give you a brief overview of our digestive system. And I'm sorry, I'm going to cover up, you can see this picture here of the digestive system. I'm going to cover it up briefly. But I want you to really understand where leaky gut is happening in your body. And the human digestive system is really so amazing, just like the whole body. Not only does it have the function of breaking down the food that we eat and assimilating the nutrients from that food into our bodies, but it's intertwined with our immune system and our brain health and our mental health. And in functional nutrition, we believe that all body systems are connected and that one body system affects the other. And with the digestive system, this is really evident. So here's a fun fact. Did you know that digestion actually, it starts in your brain? And this is called the cephalic phase. And you may have heard that our gut and our brain are connected. We call this the gut-brain axis. And this is an example of that. The sight, sound, smell, and thought of food trigger your brain to transmit signals down your central nervous system through the vagus nerve, which runs from the brainstem to the digestive system. So our vagus nerve actually physically connects our brain and our digestive system. And this is really a topic for another presentation because there's a lot we could talk about here. But it's so important to know, especially for our community, that there is a gut-brain connection because compromised brain function can affect digestion and compromised digestion can affect brain function. And this is because they communicate back and forth, and this is called a bidirectional system. Now, physical digestion starts in our mouth with our teeth and our saliva. And in interest of time, I'm going to go through this very briefly. I'm just going to move this a minute so you can um, see this picture here. Again, I'm sorry about this situation, but I want you to think about what you had for breakfast this morning. So the first thing that we do when we eat is we chew our food, and chewing is so important. It's something that we don't think about, but it's really underrated because the more thoroughly we chew our food, the better our digestion is. And if we don't chew our food thoroughly enough, it affects our digestion negatively. Because when we chew, it helps us to activate enzymes, and our saliva contains enzymes that help us to start breaking down our food. And there are actually specific enzymes for each macronutrient, and they're produced at different points during the digestive process. Now, just a reminder, in case you don't remember, macronutrients are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. So we swallow our food. Hopefully we chew it first, right? We chew it thoroughly. And then we swallow our food, and it travels down the esophagus and goes into our stomach. And in our stomach, it's both mechanically and chemically digested. And you can picture the mechanical portion of digestion. I'm stumbling on that word here. The mechanical portion of digestion, kind of like a blender. So you put some food in your blender and a little water, and those blades kind of chop and dice up the food, right? In the stomach, we have muscular layers that contract and churn and mix the food. And then we have these gastric secretions, which are enzymes and hydrochloric acid, and also hormones that further break down the food. And that's the chemical part of digestion. And at this point, our food becomes a liquid called chyme. And the chyme contains vitamins and minerals from our food. And so at this point, our food is going to travel out of the stomach down to our small intestine. And this is the main part of our body that we're going to be focusing on this evening. This is where the majority of nutrients that from the food that you just ate are absorbed. And this is where leaky gut comes into play. Now, when I use the word gut, I'm not referring to the stomach. I'm actually talking about your small intestine. And I think that's probably why the term intestinal permeability is better. In scientific literature, it's referred to as intestinal permeability or increased intestinal permeability. And sometimes I've even seen intestinal hyperpermeability. And I'm going to get into the specifics of why that terminology is important and what that means in just a moment. But in case you didn't know, I'll move this again. Your small intestine is not small. It's actually, if you were to stretch it out, it's between 10 and 20 feet long. That's an average number, but that's about as long. Sorry, I'm moving this all around here. I'm trying to find an optimal position. That's about as tall as 1 to 2 basketball hoops. So I'd like you to take a moment to just locate your small intestine. So if you could put one hand above your belly button and under your rib cage, and then the other hand at the bottom of your abdomen above your pelvis. This is where your small intestine is. It's all coiled up in there and in the space in between your hands as well. Now, I want to take a closer look at the small intestine. The small intestine is really like a long tube, and inside this tube we have 3 layers, and these make up what we call the gut mucosa. And the epithelium is the innermost layer that is lined with a single layer of cells, and they come into contact with your food. Now, I want to note that sitting above the epithelial layer is a layer of mucus, and this mucus lines the epithelium, and it helps to keep the pathogenic or bad bacteria out of your bloodstream, and it keeps the beneficial bacteria in. Now, I really love this picture here. I think it's a good illustration because here you can see the gut epithelium, so the lining of your small intestine, and this is the mucus layer. And they've illustrated some different types of bacteria that are kind of swimming along in the mucus layer here. But they've also shown some other cells that are kind of all around the epithelium, and some are embedded in the epithelium. And these are actually immune cells. And then, of course, here is your bloodstream. Inside the epithelium, we have these small finger-like projections, and these are called villi. And the villi are covered by millions of tiny little microvilli. So here's a close-up of that. You can see these kind of peaks here are your villi, and these little tiny finger-like or hair-like projections are called microvilli. And their job is to kind of draw the nutrients in. The villi and the microvilli are where the main absorption of your nutrients takes place. And this is where the nutrients are passing through to your bloodstream, because the intestines are actually designed to be a little leaky or permeable. And this is because we want the nutrients to be able to get into the bloodstream. So this is why scientists are using the term increased intestinal permeability. And the mucus layer that we just talked about and the epithelial layer are actually designed to block other substances like chemicals and toxins and bacteria and large molecules from passing into the bloodstream. So we want to keep those substances that I just mentioned out of the bloodstream, but we want to allow the nutrients to go in. So if we're being very technical, the term leaky gut or intestinal permeability aren't really accurate because they're supposed to be that way. They're supposed to be a little leaky. But with that being said, I'm probably still going to say leaky gut throughout the rest of the presentation. Now, the cells of your epithelial layer form a sort of barrier, and you may have heard of this called the intestinal barrier, or you may have heard the term barrier function. This is what we're talking about here. It's these epithelial cells, again, form a barrier to keep these substances that I just talked about out of your bloodstream. And the barrier is bound together by cellular junctions, specifically tight junctions. And these junctions maintain the barrier function of the epithelium. They keep them together. And I kind of sometimes use my fingers to kind of show you because there's this little gap here, but they keep them together so that only those nutrients are passing through, but these other substances cannot. So what I've just described and what you can see in this picture is how your gut should ideally look and function. But unfortunately for many of us, or maybe even for most of us, our gut barriers are not functioning optimally. So now I just want to show you a picture of what happens when there is dysfunction of the mucosal barrier. And again, I'll try to arrange this so this works for you. There are multiple factors that can lead to the breakdown of the epithelial cells and the tight junctions. And when this happens, the gap between the cells that form your intestinal barrier get wider. So you can see that really well in this picture. You can see this is a normal tight junction, and these two cells, they're called enterocytes, are close together, and that's how they should be. And here you can see that the junction has degraded or broken down, and all of these different elements, these substances, are spilling through to the bloodstream. So chemicals, bacteria, fungi, large molecules, food molecules, all of these things which are meant to stay in the intestinal lumen in that tube, instead pass through these gaps and go into the bloodstream. And as you can imagine, this is not a good thing, right? When this happens, it's creating an immune response because these substances are not supposed to be there. And I didn't mention this yet, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but about 70 to 80% of our immune cells are located right there in our gut. And of course, our gut microbiome, which are the collection or community of microbes that inhabit our small intestine and live in our large intestine primarily, they're deeply connected to our body's immune response. So when these junctions degrade and begin to break down, like we're seeing in this picture, and the substances are leaking through to the bloodstream, antibodies are activated. And this sets off an immune response and a whole kind of a chain reaction that leads to irritation and inflammation in our bodies. Because again, the immune system has detected something that shouldn't be there, right? And this could be food particles, which is often why we have food sensitivity show up on those food sensitivity tests, or even pathogenic bacteria. And over time, this can lead to symptoms. If this is happening continually, this can lead to symptoms and eventually illness. And in fact, many chronic illnesses, including autoimmune conditions and conditions like the inflammatory bowel conditions, such as irritable bowel syndrome and ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, they've all been associated with increased intestinal permeability. And especially you have to think about it if our intestinal lining, which it regenerates itself every few days. So the body knows what it's doing. It's regenerating itself every few days. But if we're constantly bombarding it with things that are contributing to this barrier breakdown, this may lead to long-term illness or health issues. And I'd also like to mention here that in studies that were done on the microbiome and intestinal permeability in CCM patients, something called gram-negative bacteria is mentioned as a trigger for cavernous malformations. So I just want to take a moment just to talk about what that is. Just move this over again. So gram-negative bacteria is a type of bacteria that can be found in most people's intestinal tracts. It's pretty normal. But when the epithelial layer becomes more permeable, like we see in this picture, and we have, gaps between the epithelial cells, the bacteria can escape or translocate. And that means it's moving around right through the bloodstream to different organs or parts of the body. It can include the brain and cause different problems. And it's specifically the outer layer of the gram-negative bacteria that contains something called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS for short. And this is the component of the gram-negative bacteria that can cause a lot of problems in our bodies. So what causes leaky gut to happen in the first place? We talked about where it happens. We talked about all of these different factors, but why? Why is it happening? And there are actually many contributing factors that can lead to the breakdown of the epithelium, which results in leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability. And some of these factors include chronic stress, pathogenic bacteria, parasites, viral infections, and yeast overgrowth. Using anti-inflammatories like NSAIDs, which are they're a class of anti-inflammatory that include medications like ibuprofen, and using them frequently over long periods of time because these can lead to barrier breakdown. Poor nutrition, like eating a lot of processed foods, added and artificial sugars, drinking a lot of alcohol. And here's where the additives and emulsifiers also come into play. Some medications, such as birth control, steroids, the proton pump inhibitors that we take for acid reflux, and even chemotherapy, they can all have a damaging effect on the gut lining and have a negative effect on our gut flora. Household and environmental chemicals, frequent antibiotic use, and gluten consumption. These can all be triggers of increased intestinal permeability. But with that being said, I just want to emphasize that there are definitely times when we need to take ibuprofen, like after brain surgery, right? There are times when we need to take antibiotics. We all know that antibiotics can be life-saving. Some of us need to take pharmaceutical drugs on a regular basis to manage different health conditions. So there's a time and a place for all of these things, especially the medications. And I'm definitely not trying to tell you that you should not take these things. And I don't want to scare you. That's not my intention. I just want you to be mindful of the effect that these things can have on our epithelial layer or our epithelial barrier, and mindful of the frequency in which we're exposed to these things. And in a little while, we're going to get to some different foods and specific nutrients that you can bring into your diet that can kind of help to counteract these different things. There are a lot of symptoms that are associated with leaky gut, but most of them are very non-specific. So this is where it's really important for you to observe your symptoms over a period of time and look at them kind of like clues within the context of your health history, both past and present. And some of these non-specific symptoms that I'm talking about are constipation and or diarrhea, anxiety, bloating, gas, brain fog, poor immunity, chronic joint pain, food sensitivities and intolerances. These are just a few of the symptoms that can be associated with leaky gut, but as you can see, these are symptoms that can really go along with many different conditions and things. So this is where it's really important for us to observe things and within the context of our own health history. And when I'm working with my clients, I use something called a functional wellness journal. And we use this to track and follow trends and make observations. So we look at their bowel movements, we look at frequency and consistency. We look at the quality of the food that they're eating. We observe whether or not there are any symptoms that are popping up after they eat a certain food. We look at sleep and movement and all of those different factors. And it really helps to kind of give us a picture and collect some personal data and give us a picture as to what's going on in there, right? What's going on inside of their bodies and to kind of help connect the dots. And this is something that you can do at home too. You really just need a pen and paper, and you can just start. If you suspect that you have an issue, you can just start writing down like what you ate at every meal, how your bowel movements are, some of these key things, and it'll start giving you a picture of what's going on. And then you can always bring that information to your doctor just so that they have some data, and then that can help connect the dots. So it's really important for us to be observant and aware of what's going on in our bodies, because again, when increased intestinal permeability goes unchecked, it could lead to illness. So with all this being said, the good news is that most people are able to resolve their intestinal permeability. And I look at this like an ongoing process with really no specific endpoint, because things like food, chronic stress, medications, environment, all of these factors that we've been talking about can really compromise our intestinal integrity. And we are all exposed to some or many of these things on a daily basis. So I think it's really good practice to continually take care of our gut health and incorporate specific nutrients into our diets that can help to help heal and seal the gut. Now, when I talk about gut healing, it's not what I would call an exact science, because it's very bio-individual. And what I mean by this is our nutrition, our environmental factors, each person's unique health history, they all impact and interact with a person's body on a very individual basis. So that's what I mean when I talk about bio-individuality. And in my practice, I use something called the 4 Rs as a framework. And we individualize it. I individualize it for each client. And most of these steps can be done simultaneously because, as you probably know, healing is not a linear process. So unfortunately, healing is not a process of, you do step 1, you do step 2, you do step 3, and boom, you're healed. I mean, that would be nice. We would like that to be the case. But sometimes you have to jump around a little. And so what we do is we work to identify the triggers that are leading to intestinal permeability, or that we suspect may be leading to intestinal permeability, and we remove them. And this can take some time and some trial and error, especially if we suspect, that there may be a food sensitivity. So again, it's a very individualized process. And this is where that functional wellness journal that I mentioned earlier really becomes useful, because again, we have some data, some personal data to kind of help us start connecting the dots. However, with that being said, there are some general things that I usually recommend for the people who I'm working with to remove or work towards removing while they're working on gut healing. And in my practice, I call these non-negotiables. And these are gluten, added and artificial sugars, alcohol, because alcohol can actually damage the mucus cells in the gut and compromise barrier function, and processed foods. The next step in our 4 Rs framework is to replace. And there are so many foods and drinks that we can and should be incorporating into our diets in order to create a rich and diverse microbiome. And we're going to talk about specific foods in just a moment. But many people tend to focus on the foods that need to be removed and worry about what they're going to eat. They kind of dwell on that and think, man, I'm going to have to cut everything out. Or, if I suggest taking gluten out, they may think, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat? Or sometimes they worry about having to take out a whole food group. And that's usually not the case. While we may remove certain foods that are triggering symptoms and leading to leaky gut, we often really emphasize all of the foods that you should be including and bringing into your diet. And then after the healing process, we start focusing on reincorporating foods and bringing things back in and seeing how your body reacts. The next thing that we do in our process, our 4Rs framework, and I'll just move this over here, is we re-inoculate. And when we re-inoculate, we're focusing on feeding the microbiome with prebiotics and probiotics. And we have trillions of bacteria that live in our gut microbiome in both our small and large intestine. And this is a combination of good and bad bacteria, and they have to be balanced. And so again, our food, our environment, our stress, lifestyle factors, and all of these other things that we've been talking about during this whole time can deplete our good bacteria. And when this happens, it leads to something called dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is when our gut is out of balance. So the pathogenic bacteria, such as the gram-negative bacteria that we talked about earlier, can dominate and outpopulate the good bacteria. And this is not a good thing. Typically, when that happens, we start to have symptoms and it can lead to problems. So we don't want that to happen. And what I usually recommend when I'm working with my clients is a high quality probiotic along with probiotic foods and drinks. But for our community, Dr. Awad discourages the use of probiotic supplements because he has had some patients who have bled after taking one. So he really recommends that we hold off until we know more and until more research is done. However, what we can do is we can be diligent about including probiotic and prebiotic rich foods into our diets every day. The fourth part of our framework is to repair. And there are specific nutrients and medicinal herbs that have been shown to support the healing of intestinal permeability and decreasing inflammation. And these are elements that can be incorporated on a daily basis into our diets to support the healing process. However, you always do need to check with your doctor before you take any new herbs or supplements. Another aspect of gut repair is something is lifestyle. Sorry, I'm having a mental block here. It's lifestyle change, and this is something that I'm not going to have adequate time to really get into tonight. But just like chewing, lifestyle can be really underestimated. We can really underestimate how much our lifestyle impacts our overall health and well-being. And I'm talking about things like managing stress, good quality sleep, incorporating self-care, right? A lot of things that we're all busy and we tend to neglect, but these all play a huge role in our overall well-being, but especially for our brain health and our gut health. So how do we know if we're on the right track and our gut is getting better? I'm just going to cover this picture up here. First, I don't view gut health as, or gut repair, I'm sorry, not gut health, gut repair as something that has a static endpoint. So like your gut is repaired and now you can go back to life as it was before. I think that we need to be continually maintaining our gut health through our diet and our lifestyle. However, when I'm working with clients, typically I do see symptoms starting to resolve, and I usually see their bowel movements becoming more regular and consistent. And I haven't talked too much about bowel movements tonight, but it is something that I really do like to talk about with my clients. It's something that you can observe as well. I know it seems a little weird, it's a little awkward to talk about, but it is a great way for us to gauge our digestive health. Now, with bowel movements, we can observe whether or not there are any undigested food particles. This could tell us whether or not we're chewing well enough, or maybe we have low stomach acid. We might observe a pattern of loose stools or hard stools, or maybe a pattern of both. And you may not know this, but we should be ideally having 2 to 3 healthy bowel movements every day. So if you're not having 2 to 3 healthy bowel movements every day, or even one, you know that there's something that you need to be doing to get your digestion functioning a little more optimally. And observing our stools, kind of like what I've said, really gives us clues as to what's going on inside of our digestion. So without further ado, I want to talk about some specific foods and nutrients that we can eat in order to help heal and seal our gut and keep it healthy. So the first thing that I want to mention is kind of like a superstar. It's polyphenols. It is a fantastic nutrient. Polyphenols are a compound that are found in most vegetables, fruit, and spices, and especially the colorful ones. And they help to feed good gut bacteria, and they're full of antioxidants, and they're great for brain health. So you really can't lose with polyphenols. It's something that you really have to, would be great to start bringing into your diet. Now, just as a side note, for all of the foods and drinks that I'm about to mention, I do have a list in the back of your recipe guide that has all of these things written out. So you don't feel like you have to take notes. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Cruciferous vegetables are another great vegetable to incorporate into your diet, a great category, because cruciferous vegetables have a healing effect. They reduce inflammation in the gut, and they help to feed that good gut bacteria. Now, something that is really good for all of us to do, that we all need to work towards doing, I think, is to really try and eat a large diversity of fruit and vegetables, because the more diversity we eat, this provides our gut microbes with food, and actually it helps to lead to more microbial diversity. So, and this is because all of those fruits and vegetables, sorry, I'm trying to find an ideal spot here. All of those fruits and vegetables are full of fiber, which is feeding the good bacteria. It's a prebiotic. And I know that it might be a struggle when I talk about, diversifying, eating as many fruits and vegetables as possible. I don't know about you, but I tend to fall into a habit of eating the same vegetables every day, the same salad every day. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the more that we can diversify, the better, because again, we're going to increase our microbial diversity. So something that you might want to try is every week when you go to the grocery store, maybe just buy you can get the normal vegetables and fruits that you usually get, but maybe just buy something new along with that, and 1 or 2 new vegetables, and learn a really good way to prepare them so they taste really good. And then the next week, try something else new. And then in this way, you're kind of rotating, you're adding some new vegetables into the rotation, and you're going to help hopefully increase that intestinal or that microbial diversity. Okay, so fermented foods. Oops, did I skip one? Okay, fermented foods and drinks. They are a fantastic way for you to get probiotic bacteria into your diet. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where to position this again. Fermented foods were actually part of many of our ancestors' diets, because fermenting food was the best way to preserve that food, especially before refrigeration came about. And the byproduct of this is that these foods are easier to digest. They're full of probiotics, and the fermented vegetables, are full of prebiotics. And again, because you're not taking a regular probiotic supplement, having a few fermented foods or drinks on a daily basis is a great way for you to get your prebiotics. Now, normally what I recommend to my clients is to take a low and slow approach. Especially if they come to me with some digestive issues, if they sit down and start eating a whole bowl of sauerkraut every day, it might lead to some problems, right? Some bloating, some discomfort. So I normally suggest maybe starting with 1 to 2 tablespoons of a fermented food every day, and just slowly increasing that amount depending on how your body does with it. Now, I've included a link at the end of your recipe guide to a great website. It's a blog that I've used many times to as a reference called the Nourish Kitchen, and it has a lot of recipes to teach you how to ferment your own foods. Now, if you want to buy fermented foods at the store, it can be possible. But like with everything else, you just have to read the label. You really have to look at the ingredients, look for additives, emulsifiers. They put those emulsifiers in everything. Darla, you know that. And added sugars. And especially with fermented dairy, they tend to add a lot of sugar. And I have been able to find good quality kimchi and sauerkraut occasionally at my local Walmart. And these are in the refrigerated section. But canned sauerkraut and other canned foods and also store-bought pickles do not contain live probiotics. So I just wanted to mention that. There are several herbs and supplements that can also be really helpful for us during the gut healing process. But again, supplements and herbs are very individualized to each person. So it's really good to always check with your doctor before you take anything new, especially if you're taking medications or you're having seizures. Even something benign that wouldn't seem like it would cause any problems could trigger a seizure. You never know. So I think it's always better just to play it safe and just double check. Now, I just want to mention that my philosophy when it comes to supplementation is that it's always best for us to get our nutrients through our food because the nutrients are more easily absorbed that way. But there are times when we need some extra support, right? And this is when supplementation comes in. And this is where it's really important to bring your doctor into the conversation. So the first thing that I'm going to mention is glutamine. And glutamine is something that our intestinal cells use as the main fuel for gut repair and maintenance. And glutamine can actually decrease infections in the gut, as well as the risk of bacterial translocation, which we talked about earlier. And this is because it works to heal and seal the intestinal lining. Now, our bodies produce glutamine. It's actually one of the most abundant amino acids in our bodies. And the problem is that our glutamine reserves can become depleted when our bodies are experiencing stress. And I'm not just talking about emotional stress, that definitely plays a role, but it can also be metabolic stressors, like if we have diabetes or we're overweight or we have high blood sugar or high triglyceride levels. Also infections or injuries or surgery, these things all put stress on our bodies, right? And so they lower our glutamine levels. And these are situations where we might want to consider supplementing, especially if we're experiencing some of these stressors that I mentioned and if we suspect that we have some intestinal permeability going on. Collagen also helps to repair the gut lining because it reduces inflammation and it maintains intestinal integrity because it contains amino acids, including glutamine. And I also wanted to mention vitamin C in here because vitamin C is a precursor for collagen. So it actually helps our body's natural collagen production. It stimulates our body's natural collagen production. So getting some vitamin C rich foods in our diet really can be helpful. And once again, I just want to mention, I know I'm covering up the slide. I apologize for that, but all of these foods that I'm mentioning that are on the slide will be in your recipe guide. So you can definitely get those there. Aloe vera juice or powder is another great supplement that you can include into your gut healing regimen. And aloe vera has been used for thousands of years as a remedy and a preventative for many health conditions, and that includes digestive issues. And it has a really soothing effect on the digestive tract, and it can help with constipation, which is always fantastic. And it may help to regulate those tight gap junctions. And you can buy 100% pure organic aloe vera juice in the store or online. And I just want to mention that I've seen aloe vera juice at the dollar store and CVS and Rite Aid. But if you look at the back, they typically have a lot of sugar in it. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 100% pure organic aloe vera juice. It doesn't have much of a flavor, but it can be very, very helpful. Deglycerinated licorice is another great one. Licorice root is so soothing and healing to the mucous membranes in your digestive tract. And you can take this as a supplement, but you can also drink it as a tea. Low zinc levels, they can contribute to lots of GI diseases, and they can lead to a compromised intestinal barrier because zinc is an essential nutrient for gut repair as well as our immune health. And it's really interesting because a lot of these nutrients that I'm talking about tonight also support our immune health. And that's because, again, everything is connected, like we talked about earlier, especially our gut health and our immune health. Quercetin is a flavonoid, which is a type of polyphenol, and it helps to seal the tight gap junctions. Vitamin A is an essential nutrient for mucous membranes, and liver is particularly high in vitamin A. So if you like liver, go for it. It's really great for you. I personally cannot stomach it. I've tried to like it. I've tried to cook it in different ways, but I just can't do it. But what works for me is there's something called desiccated beef liver, which is actually the whole food, it's the liver, but they dry it out and it's powdered and they put it in capsules. So you can't taste it, but you're getting a lot of that nutrition from the liver. So it's a whole food supplement. Omega-3 fatty acids. I'm sure that you know about this. Omega-3 fatty acids are great because they help to create diversity in our microbiome, and they help to maintain intestinal wall integrity and lower inflammation. And cod liver oil is particularly high in vitamins A and D as well. So cod liver oil is a great one because you're getting kind of a trifecta. You're getting the omega-3s, you're getting vitamin A, vitamin D, and it's a whole food supplement. Now, I just wanted to mention that I have seen some concern in our community about fish oils being a blood thinner. So I just wanted to point out that I did find a 2017 review of 52 publications that concluded that fish oil exposure in surgical patients did not increase bleeding or blood transfusions either during or after surgery. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, I did put the link to that study in your recipe guide as well. But that's something that you can talk to your doctor about and just see what he or she thinks. Oh, now it's not turning the slide. Let's see. Lots of technical fun tonight. So I've come to the end of the talk, and I just want to give you a minute. I'm going to move this so you can see this link, but I want to give you a minute to write down this link so that you can download the recipe guide that I mentioned. And it includes a lot of information from this presentation. And I'm going to also post a link in our group later so that you can access it there as well. So I'll just give you a moment. If you didn't get that link, I will post it in our group and I can make sure that you get it later. But I just wanted to mention as well, if you feel like you want some extra help with your nutrition and making lifestyle changes, I'd be happy to support you with that. I do work with clients one-on-one, so we can talk together. I can offer you a complimentary discovery call, and I have a link in the recipe guide as well. It's full of links. But I just also wanted to thank you so much for showing up tonight, because I think that it's so important for us to take interest in our health and to be our own health advocates and to learn as much as we can about what's going on inside of our bodies. And that's what you're doing tonight. So I just want to thank you for coming. And I hope that you learned some things about leaky gut tonight, despite our little technical issues. And I don't know if we have time, Darla, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can answer them somewhere else if that's better.
Thank you. I think we have time for a few questions.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to find how to turn my camera back on.
Should I stop sharing here?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Hi.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was really interesting.
Sorry about that.
That's, oh, you know what? That's okay. It is completely okay. We all have our moments, right? All right, so I have a couple of questions. Um, One is if there's a type of nutritionist that might be helpful to consult with. Is there a particular type of nutritionist that you might recommend if someone wanted to see someone like local and in person?
I mean, you can always look and see if you have any dietitians locally. It really depends on what people specialize in. Typically, if somebody has a website, they will list out what conditions they work with or what types of things they specialize in. So, I mean, unfortunately, Google is your friend here, and it's just something that you just need to do your research, especially if you want to see somebody in person. But a lot of dietitians now are working with this because it's something that's in the scientific literature now. It used to be something on the fringe. Years ago, it was kind of considered a fringe thing, leaky gut, but now we know that it's legitimate. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So there was a question in the chat about if there is some kind of test to find out if you have leaky gut, or is there a medical test to determine what's going on with your gut permeability?
Sure. I mean, there are some different tests. There's one where that can actually check for zonulin, which is something that when our the cells of our epithelial lining come into contact with gluten and some different elements, that will trigger the release of a protein called zonulin, and that can actually open up those cells and create a gap. The zonulin is kind of like a key that opens up those enterocytes and allows all of those substances to kind of go into your bloodstream. So if you have a test that detects zonulin, it's kind of an indicator that leaky gut is happening. However, I don't know offhand what the cost is, but a lot of these tests tend to be really expensive. And what I found personally and in working with clients is sometimes it's less expensive and better to kind of do some investigative work on your own and kind of experiment and see how if your symptoms are resolving with nutritional changes and lifestyle changes.
Thank you. Um, what do you think about fasting? Someone's asking what you think about fasting.
For for
Um,
leaky gut or just in general or
they didn't specify, so
uh,
let's go with for leaky gut.
I mean, I don't know if fasting has any specific benefits for leaky gut. I haven't read any studies that have talked about that. Um, I will say, I think, I'm assuming they're talking about something like intermittent fasting. That can have a lot of great benefits, but I think it's not for everybody. It really depends on each person's like medical well-being, how if their blood sugar is stable. There's a lot of things. I wouldn't just say it's good for everybody. I think it really depends on the person.
Got it. Someone is asking if monk fruit powder is considered artificial sugar.
That's a good question. I don't think so. There's so many sugar substitutes that are popping up these days. I'm not always on top of every one. I know about monk fruit powder, but I don't think it's an artificial sugar. I think it comes from a natural plant. But I'm not sure like what the long-term effects of it are, but I don't think it's an artificial sugar.
Okay. Um, I think that's all we have for questions. I think we got them all, and we're right on time, so it seems like a good time to wrap up. I did put the link for support group in the chat a couple of times. I'm going to drop it one more time right now. There, one more time. So grab it now if you want to come into support group. Jennifer, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know that you spent a lot of time getting your presentation together, and it was fantastic and really informative. We appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for coming to Jennifer's chat with us. Hop on a support group, and we will see you for next month's webinar.
Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Bye.